What's going on YouTube? Ryos here, and today I'm going to be giving you guys 20 tips and tricks that I always use in FL Studio. So I'm not totally sure if other DAWs such as Logic and Ableton have these same functions. I don't know, I'm not too experienced with them. All these tips and tricks are going to be based around and used for FL Studio. If you don't use FL Studio and you're watching this video, stick around because you might be able to get some inspiration and look up how to do the things I'm going to discuss today within your DAW. Or you can just switch to FL Studio because FL Studio is the best DAW. Who said that? What? Not me. What? Just kidding. But without further ado, let's hop right into it. Also, quickly, before we get started, I have a new song coming out that I'm so freaking excited for. I'm so stoked for it. Hardwell's premiering it on Friday, so I'm uploading this on Wednesday. So Friday, Hardwell's going to be premiering a new song of mine. Be sure to tune in. Tip number 1, setting up a template to open up every time you open FL. So in my case here, my template, I just have the BPM set to 128 because that's the BPM I tend to work in the most. And then for the mixer, I just have a bunch of empty tracks routed to the master with just a limiter on. So just for example's sake, we'll open up the parametric EQ from FL Studio, we'll say. And for some reason, we want our tracks to have this giant notch at 600 Hertz. So now if this is the project you wanted to use as your default template, what you could do is click Shift Control S, that'll be your save as. And what you'll want to do is you'll want to navigate to your FL Studio folders. And it all depends on where you install FL Studio. So in my case, I'll show you right here. So I installed it in the Program Files folder. So it'd be Program Files, Image Line, FL Studio 20, Data, and then you'll see this folder here, Templates. Click on that. There should be a user folder here. If not, you can create one, just call it User. And then in here, you'll see the project. So we'll name this, we'll name it Test Template. So now what we'll do is we can close FL Studio. We will open it back up. And then what you could do here is actually go New from Template, and then look, our test template's here. We can open that, and here it is, our EQ with the limiter that we have set up. So now that our file is showing up under the templates, what you'd want to do is click this button right here. This is Change Default Template. Go down to the bottom right, and it'll give you all the options here. Click the one you want, and then from there on out, you're all good to go. Before we hop into tip number 2, I made a quick idea just messing around, having some fun. And what I wanted to do is actually utilize tips 2 through 20, and I want to utilize them in this project so you guys can see exactly how to use it in a real producing experience thing, I guess. All right, so for context, I'll show you the song. So that's a song. So tip number 2. Tip number 2 is actually to duplicate your arrangement so that you could work on other ideas within the same project. The way you would do that is by going to your playlist up here, and you can click Clone. And it defaults to doing arrangement _2. We can name it Yeah Boy. And we can actually flip-flop. And for example, let's say in this project here, for some reason we wanted to try with no bass and no leads. Now that's all duplicated separately so that we still have our original idea. It's something super helpful that I always use when trying out multiple drop ideas or something like that in one project so it doesn't get too messy and hectic. Tip number 3, you could actually quick color all your channels at once using a gradient. You guys know I'm a big advocate for being organized, and the way I color code quickly is by going to your channel rack here, going to all. Actually, quick bonus tip, you can actually sort by track number, which is something super helpful that I always do. Now what you can do here is select all these channels by clicking them and dragging them down. You can go to the drop down menu, hit color selected, gradient, and pick 2 colors. So I picked that light yellow one, and then we could do, let's say, pink. Now it'll color code everything in your channel rack, and it's a really quick way to get the colors and make it look pretty. And from now on, you can just organize your sounds using this color scheme. Tip number 4, using FL Studio's chop tool to quickly change sustained notes into rhythmic notes. So for example, we have this piano. If we wanted these sustained chords to play a more rhythmic pattern or whatever, instead of chopping it up or redrawing them in, what you could simply do is click the drop down on the piano roll, go to Tools, Chop, and then the screen will pop up, and you could adjust the time multiplier to however fast you want it. And that's all you have to do. Super quick way to chop up your MIDI. Tip number 5, making a reverse reverb using Edison. Let's say you wanted to take this brass sound and you wanted a reverse reverb to sweep into it. What you would want to do is you'd want to go to the mixer channel, add the reverb of your choice. In this case, I'm going to use FL Studio stock. You just want to make sure that the wetness and the decay are turned up very high. And then what you want to do is open up Edison, by clicking the scissors. You want to click record and solo the sound that you want to be reversed. After it's finished recording, you can just simply drop it in. We'll insert a new track. All you want to do now is double click this, reverse it, and you want to just time it right. We'll say like right here. And now you have a reverse reverb. Tip number 6, using the save new version function. So for example, let's say that this project I have here, let's say I was done working on it for the night. I would file, export it as usual, listen to it, whatever. Now the next day when I go to work on this again, what you want to do is go right up to the top and click file, save new version before you start working on it. Now, let's say you work on it, let's say you have a long day and whatever, and let's say you wind up ruining it. Let's say you like version 1 better. Well, now you'll have that project untouched as you left it the night before. The whole point of this is to make sure your exported copies and your project files line up in version numbers so that if you hear that you like version 2 better, for example, you can quickly open up that project and have that project there for you ready to work on. Tip number 7, automating a send to get perfect delays. Now, let's say you wanted to add delay to something, but you wanted to just get a certain note or a certain section of that. What most people would try to do is they'd add their delay to the effects chain and they would right click and do create automation clip. Now, the problem with this is, let's say, you know, we'll set it up so that the delay starts on the notes that we want to. So if we listen to that, you'd be like, oh, that's fine. But what happens is, in the context of the song, the delay will pick up the other notes. Listen. So to get those perfect delays, what we want to do is we want to route it to a blank mixer track. We'll open up a delay plugin that we choose. I'm just going to use HDelay because it's my favorite delay personally. Now what you want to do is you want to automate the send here. So you would right click and do create automation clip. The important thing is when you're using it as a send to make sure it's 100% wet. And let's take a listen. Perfect. Tip number 8 is controlling multiple plugins using one automation clip. Now let's say in this project, for example, we wanted to create a build up and we wanted to pitch up these 3 sounds. Typically what you would do is you would go to each sound, right click, create automation clip on the pitch, and pitch things up individually. But what we could do instead is, let's say we go to the main bass, for example. We'll right click, create pitch as normal, and then we would draw in the pattern that we want. Now what we want to do to link the other sounds to that clip now is do the same thing. So go to create automation clip under the pitch. But what you'll do different here is, instead of hitting create automation clip, under remote control, click link to controller. And then under internal controller, you'll want to select the new automation clip. In this case, it's called Spire_X64 channel pitch. So we'll select that. And then after that, if you see this remove conflict button highlighted, just uncheck it and then click accept. And now what you'll see is that it's linked to the one automation clip. Tip number 9, copying automation clips to get the same curve. So let's say we have our curve. Let's look at the drop bass volume automation clip. You see it's 2 bars on, 2 bars off, 2 bars on, 2 bars off. So let's say for whatever reason we wanted the bass to follow the same pattern, but we didn't want to use tip number 8 and link it to one automation clip, but instead create another one. What we could do is we can go to our drop bass group and we can get a new fruity balance, create automation clip. So now we have another volume parameter being automated just like the brass. Now instead of penciling it in and, you know, copying automation points and all that other stuff, what you can just do is you can double click, go to the top left hand corner in the drop down menu under articulator, and then copy state. Now go to the automation clip that you want to copy that over to, do the same thing, drop down menu, articulator, and then paste state. And then you'll see it copies right over. Tip number 10 is one that I personally use all the time, and that's using the insert space function to create more room in your projects without having to manually move everything around. So for example, in this project, let's say right after this bit here, let's say I wanted like a really dramatic drop off. Now, instead of moving everything manually, what I could do is just highlight the section that I want a space added, go to File, Edit, and then Insert Space. Now, once you've clicked insert space, it'll automatically move everything else without you having to touch anything and give you the space that you desire to work with. Tip number 11, use the data folder in each project to make sure that you never lose any bounced out tracks or any recorded audio. So the way you would go about doing this is go to Options, and then under Options, you'll see Project General Settings, click that, and then you'll see Data Folder. So as you'll see here, we don't have anything under the Data Folder section. If we click Auto, it'll automatically tell FL Studio to put any frozen clips or any rendered audio, whatever, into this location. To take it a step further, we can click the folder icon next to it and create a whole new folder so that it's specifically wherever we want it. In this case, I'd want it to be under YouTube. I'd click Make New Folder. I'd name that folder 20 FL tips, and then click OK. And then, would you like to save the current project in this folder? I typically do. So now the pathway I set here, everything that I render, everything that I export will all get sent to this folder. Sometimes when you're moving things around with hard drives and stuff, things can get lost. And this is just a good way to ensure that all your recorded and files needed to run this project properly are all within one location. Tip number 12, make quick arpeggiators using chords through the Fruity Wrapper settings. So open up the plugin that you'd want to make the arpeggiator that has chords already. Click the cogwheel in the top left and the wrench. And then after that, you'll see this arpeggiator section down here. Choose the direction and adjust the time as you want for a quick arpeggiator. Tip number 13, if you prefer to have a little bit more control using your arps and actually prefer everything penciled in, what you could do is still use chords and hit Alt-A with the chords open, and it'll automatically make an arpeggiator for you, and you could adjust some settings to get it how you want. For a quick arpeggiator with more control. Tip number 14, automate the volume multiplier instead of the channel volume to get more control and more volume. Let's say, for example, we wanted to take this percussion and we wanted to automate the volume in a certain section. We'll say this section right here. As you can see, when you automate the channel volume, it's already set to 78%, and I believe you're only given about an additional 6 dB when you automate it to 100% here. Now it doesn't get as loud as I want, so instead what we could do is we could double click our audio source and then go to the wrench, and under levels adjustment there's a volume knob. You can boost it up or you can create an automation clip, and you'll see here it's given to you at 50% and you can make it much louder, and I believe it's a 20 dB increase, which is very loud. Volume warning. So as you can see there, it's much louder than automating the channel volume, and it gives us much more control. Tip number 15, copying over effects chains to new tracks quickly. Let's say we wanted to take this sound here, and we wanted to take that processing and put it on this sound. What you could do is just right click the channel that you want to be copied, go to File, Save Mixer State As, and click and drag onto the desired track. And just like that, it's all copied over. Tip number 16, auditioning samples using the scroll wheel. So in this project, I have the drums already laid out and I have this kick pattern. If I wanted to try a new kick, I can just drag and drop into the sampler channel. Or what's quicker is I can just scroll over the sounds that I want to try and hit the scroll wheel. It's a much faster way to find the sound you're looking for. Tip number 17, every now and then make sure you guys are hitting F12 to close all your windows. What happens is sometimes you can see here, if we hide our playlist by hitting F5, you can see that we have all these open plugin windows that I forgot to close. But what happens is sometimes when you have a big project and you have all these plugin windows open, it takes a toll on your computer. And if you exit out, for example, your project and you reopen it, sometimes it's such a stress on your computer that it can't open up because so many plugin interfaces are open. I've had problems where I can't even open project files anymore because I forgot to close all the windows. So to avoid any project mishaps or project corruptions or whatever, and to ease the stress up on your computer, just hit F12 and it'll hide all those windows and you'll be good to go. Tip number 18, switch on Smart Disable for all plugins so that it reduces your CPU load. The way you would do that is by going to Tools in the upper left-hand corner, going to Macros, and then going to switch Smart Disable for all plugins on. And it even says it in the top left corner there, you'll see it says this will spare CPU. And then in the right corner, you'll see my CPU meter is at 2223 right now. When I click switch Smart Disable for all plugins, you'll see that drops right down to 4 or 5. And again, it like basically turns off all the plugins when you're not using them, and it'll turn on when you are using them. So it's just a good way to reduce your CPU load. Tip number 19, this is one of my favorites that are probably on this list, and that is grouping automation clips underneath their main tracks. Now, this is a huge organization tip and one that I use literally every single day. So what it is let's say you have your sound, in this case the drop brass. Let's say we want to just like organize and clean up this project a little bit. What we could do is we can right click all the automation, click tracks, and click group with above track, and we could do that for all the automation clips, and then there'll be this drop down arrow under your main track now. So we can click that and it hides all the automation. In this case, I have like a volume, a pitch, and a reverb that I did for an example. Sounds like this. And then when I hide that now, it's still doing that, and you don't have to look at the automation. So that's really good. If you make the automation, you're happy with it, just group it with the above track, hide it and you won't have to look at it, and it'll be so much easier on your eyes to see less craziness on the screen. And lastly, tip 20, use Shift G to group things together so that you can move them in big chunks, especially when things get intricate. So in this project here, I have some clicks and hi-hats, and these clicks are placed very specifically, like some are off, some are on, etc. And then I have these hi-hats to follow along with it. Now what you could do is you could select all of these, hit Shift G. So after clicking Shift G, you'll see this button up here highlights, and this lets you know that the groups are now enabled. You can see here as I move these along, they move together as a unit, as opposed to over here, they're not grouped together at all and they're separate. And again, it's really easy to accidentally move things off the grid, etc., especially when you take time to be intricate and place things in certain spots. Once you're happy with that, group them all together and it'll be golden. So there you have it, 20 FL Studio tips and tricks that I always use. I hope you guys found this video helpful and enjoyed it. If you did, please be sure to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit that notification bell because I am uploading every week. If you guys have any requests or suggestions of things you'd like to see from me, feel free to leave that in the comment section down below. But other than that, that'll be all for me today. So I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.